All offseason, we've been bringing you video after video telling you who to draft, who to avoid, who we like, who's rising, who's falling, and now it's finally game time. These are my top 10 favorite players for fantasy this year based on their upside and also where I can get them in drafts. First on the list is a guy that is creeping up into first round territory. I think the word is out that Amon-Ra St. Brown is pretty good. So that's no secret. Everybody knows this by now. But what makes the Sun God one of my guys? Well, I not only have him as a first round pick, I'm putting him above guys like A.J. Brown and Stephon Diggs. That's how convinced I am that he's going to have a bigger season than last year. I mean, he was pretty good in his second season, 106 receptions, 1161 yardage, and 6 touchdowns. But I don't think a lot of people realize how much room there still is to grow. This is a receiver who didn't just get by on his target volume. He was the #1 rated receiver against man coverage. And he was also top 10 against the zone. And the best part about it is we know he clearly has a chip on his shoulder because he's constantly reciting the names of all those receivers who got picked ahead of him. Whatever motivates him is fine. I love the competitiveness. He's going to catch anything thrown in his vicinity, and he is going to get a ton of targets. This Lions receiving corps did not get any better this offseason. Jameson Williams suspended for 6 games. He's not really impressive when he is on the field, even during training camp. So St. Brown is a smash pick, and I'm taking him as an elite wideout, and he's definitely going to be one of my guys. All right, now I'm going to go with a pick that, I just decided he is going to be a player I'm going to stand behind. I kind of don't want to get too far ahead of these trendy players, the ones who are more highlight reel worthy, but I'm sold on George Pickens. I'll admit it now. I was skeptical at first, but look, we see plenty of highlight plays from undrafted rookies and, guys who don't even make the final roster. That's fine, but he does it so consistently. This is a thing where he makes those contested catches. He makes those plays because he is that athletic. He's got the long frame. He's got that ability to moss the other corners. And he's somebody who just needs to get the ball. It's just somewhere in his general vicinity, and he will come down with it. The real question here was about Kenny Pickett. And look, I don't want to take too much away from the preseason, but he's looked a lot better, and I think he can do just fine as far as getting Pickens the ball. Steelers offense isn't too pass heavy. Pickett is an elite quarterback. They already have a good receiver. Look, there are always reasons to doubt, but when a guy is clearly proven that he's a superior talent, things seem to fall in place. That leads me to another receiver who's also gotten a lot of hype and buzz this preseason, proven that he's a great talent as well, but maybe not the best situation for a receiver. But DJ Moore, I can't get enough of him. I will also admit that I'm a fan of Justin Fields. I think Fields is going to be a really good quarterback in this league for a while. And DJ Moore, he deserves this. He deserves anything better than what he's gotten. I don't think we really appreciate how good he's been given what he had to deal with in Carolina. This is a guy who put up 3 straight 1,100-yard seasons. And even when he didn't dip down a little bit in yardage last year, he's been basically a wide receiver 2 for fantasy for 4 straight years, every year since his rookie season. And that's catching the ball from guys like Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, PJ Walker, Kyle Allen. Moore just has to show up every game this season. Wide receiver 2 is his floor. His upside, top 12. And now in a very Kevin Bacon-esque 6 degrees of separation turn, let's talk about another guy who finally gets an upgrade from Baker Mayfield. David Njoku in Cleveland. Now, last year, he didn't have to deal with Baker because it was Jacoby Brissett for the first half and Deshaun Watson for the second half, which doesn't sound too bad, but Brissett is not exactly an elite passer, and Deshaun Watson looked like a shell of himself last year. So finally, he'll get the real deal, the real Watson, the full Watson, and it's just going to help. Now, Njoku hasn't really been that fancy relevant, just kind of in flashes here and there. You might remember last year, he requested a trade. They didn't do it. They kept him, and now we're going to see why, because he's going to be a featured part of this passing game. He did make some improvements last year. 58 catches on 80 targets, has been steadily improving his production in each year. Now his 4th season. Look, he's a tight end, not a receiver, not a running back. It takes a little longer for these guys to really produce as receiving threats. Cleveland did beef up its receiver core quite a bit, but Njoku is still going to be one of Watson's favorite targets. So when I'm not going Kelsey or maybe Andrews early, I'm waiting on tight end, and more often than not, it's Njoku I'm getting. All right, if you know me, if you've been watching any of my videos for the past however many years, you know I'm a fan of Cam Akers, so let's go out and just state the obvious. I'm drafting a lot of Cam Akers this year. Now, I probably had too much Cam Akers last year, I'll admit that. But you know what? I think there's still reason to be optimistic here, and that's because when he finally was fully healthy, and yeah, Achilles tears, they typically take some time, but he was what I was hoping he would be a little later than, I was hoping, but it happened. Over the last 5 games of last season, he averaged 17.4 carries per game, 90.4 yards, and that was 5.2 yards per carry. He was the Rams' offense. Now, granted, Stafford and Kupp were on the shelf, but look, this is a team that's going to still run the ball, and they really still don't have a lot besides Kupp and Stafford. There's nothing behind him at running back that worries me in any way. Kyron Williams, please. Akers is legit bell cow back that you can get in like round 5 or 6. What's even the consideration here? Why would you not smash the draft button? And then at risk of hyping this guy up maybe a little too much, but I've been talking about him enough, I have to put him on this video. That's Brian Robinson, because I've said for a guy that you can get around pick 100, who's not even being considered as a starter on fantasy teams, I think he has top 15 upside. Like Akers, got off to a really slow start last year. We all know why. Well, once he was actually something close to himself in terms of physical ability, we saw how good he was, and we don't not even realize that as far as PFF's player grades go, he was the 8th highest graded running back in terms of offensive rating. The knock on him is, well, Antonio Gibson's there to share some of the touches, and that he doesn't really catch passes. Except maybe he will now. He's really not a bad receiver, just wasn't used that way last year. Maybe Ron Rivera just didn't know he was capable of catching the ball. This preseason, he was used as a receiver. It was really encouraging. In one of the games, saw him catch 4 balls just in the first half. I think Washington's offense will be kind of sneaky good this year, and I think Robinson is going to be a big part of it. Now, I think Baltimore's offense will just be flat out good, really good. It's not going to be a surprise to anyone because you know Lamar Jackson, what he's capable of, and he's finally got some help at receiver. Mainly, I'm talking about Zay Flowers, the rookie. Flowers has been making noise and impressing people since before the NFL draft. That's why he was a first-round pick, and that's why the Ravens decided to make him their #1 guy. Look, with OBJ and Rashad Bateman both being very serious health risks, meaning that they just can't stay healthy, and Flowers is in line to be the #1 guy there. Mark Andrews might be the top target, sure, but Flowers is not only going to get the most run at receiver, he's also the guy who can be their home run hitter. He's got that speed, that downfield ability, and look, with a team that has such a great running threat at quarterback and a solid running game, they're going to be able to work the play action. Flowers is going to be open a lot. Think of Hollywood Brown the last couple of years when he was in Baltimore, that type of ability. And then when you get to the later rounds, the wide receiver just gets thin, especially if you're in an endgame league where everybody knows who to take first. Well, once you get to those rounds, there is still some upside. How about a guy who's probably going to be the #1 receiver on his team, and you can get him in like the 12th round or later, Nico Collins in Houston. You might not want too much of Houston's offense, especially the passing game, but I, for one, have said this. I like C.J. Stroud a lot. I think he might wind up being the best quarterback from this year's draft class. He's got pinpoint accuracy, does pass the ball. Nico will be his #1 target. This guy has 6'4" frame. He had a 90th percentile speed score coming out of the combine a couple years ago. He's a guy who can catch those short to intermediate passes and make some plays down the field. I think Nico Collins leads this team in receiving. I think he's a solid fantasy asset. We're winding down here, but I can't forget my guy who I've been all over since before the NFL draft. One of these rookies that really wasn't talked about a lot until recently. I saw Tank Bigsby on film, and I said, this is a guy who can make some noise in NFL. When he was drafted by Jacksonville, a lot of people just wrote him off. So now he's stuck behind Etienne. But no, he's not, because now it looks like he's forced his way into a timeshare. Now, you don't want to look too hard at preseason stats, especially for running backs, because the starters just don't play. But Tank hasn't had that chance yet. He's going to be a player. I guarantee it. Look, 5.7 yards per carry so far in the preseason. That is encouraging. He has the ability to be a receiving threat out of the backfield too. So not just an early down or short yardage guy. He could be a do-it-all back. And then for my final pick, last of my guys, I don't have a quarterback here yet. And there's a lot of elite quarterbacks you could go with early on, but sometimes you miss out on those guys or you just want to load up at other positions. So if you wait, you probably want a guy who, well, is in a good offensive system. He's got some elite players at wide receiver that he can throw to. Somebody who's experienced, maybe hasn't quite hit his peak yet. Someone who's really accurate, can throw the deep ball. I'm wondering if there's a player like that. All right, come on. I wasn't going to have a list without my guy Tua. That's right, Tua Tagovailoa is going to be a stud this season. He just has to stay healthy. And for all the haters and doubters, let me just remind you that he was first in yards per attempt last season when he was on the field. Finished 9th in fantasy points per game. He was also number 7 in accuracy rating and number 2 in red zone completion percentage. Look, the Jonathan Taylor thing didn't happen. This team has a couple running backs in the committee. They're going to mix and match. But when they get near the goal line, they like to pass it. Plenty of touchdowns, plenty of long touchdowns, ton of yardage. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Need I say more? If you're going to wait at quarterback, you go Tua. Those are the guys I'm drafting over and over again. If you want to know which players at running back and wide receiver are the best to draft in every round of your fantasy draft, check this out.